All right, hello everyone. This is Vu Nami, also known as Anki God, and this is
Cramage the Advantage. You guys call me Cramage.
all right. So I studied and graduated from a college called Ursinus College with a bachelor's degree, and I've done a post-bac program at Temple Medical School just for 1 year, and now I'm going on to starting pharmacy school as a first-year student next month, actually. And for several years, I've been practicing and getting some mastery over memory techniques such as PEG system, major system, memory palace, memory journey. I've also been introduced to some other ones that I haven't really gone into, but maybe considering, which is Dominic technique. Also, the idea of memorizing textbooks verbatim. And I'll tell you all about those if you have questions about them. Um, and yeah, what about you, Kremich? Tell us your background.
I worked full time and I started reading about memory techniques and mnemonics about a year ago. And then about 7 months, I started using some of these for card memorization and memorizing number heavy strategy card charts. And yeah, I've done a bit with memory palaces and I'm excited to, learn more that I can, any more that I can and see what I can contribute.
Oh, so Zero Affection has a question. So I've worked as a medical scribe. I've worked as um, I worked in Planned Parenthood. I also am working as a CVS pharmacy technician. Okay, so let's see. So what's Memory Palace? What the heck is it? Why is it necessary, and why does it apply to you as a student? So I'm sure many of you are students or in professional school or even high school, college. Basically, Memory Palace is an imaginary location that you are visualizing in your mind where you can store and recall a whole concept like glycolysis, Krebs cycle, etc. Hardy-Weinberg equilibrium. So all of these are some examples that you could just like memorize without even having anything in front of you. And you can memorize list of things. You can memorize a presentation, for example. And so one of the main factors about Memory Palace that really caught my attention is really the fact that it is effortless to recall spatial memory. So because if you close your eyes, right? So close your eyes right now. Just imagine yourself walking through your room from an entrance, okay? And you can just automatically know where your your computer, your bed, your closet, you know where your window's at. And so you just take advantage of those stations in your palace and incorporate a story that is so exaggerated that you cannot forget that memory. So using a made up episodic memory that can be incorporated into your long-term memory, it's going to be very beneficial to you. This is superior compared to using your traditional use of flashcards. So last session, we talked about Anki, and you can make your flashcards, okay? And you're probably going to go through them with spatial repetition in mind. But what about associations? What about your mnemonics? What about all these things that can make your memory stronger of those material, those factual information? So this is definitely a superior technique, and it's probably my favorite technique out of all the techniques. But just to keep in mind, you can merge all of those techniques together. So the PEG system and major system, you can merge into your memory palace. So if you're going into college or professional school, don't you think it's really the best idea to incorporate what you've learned into your long-term memory, even after graduating, after taking those exams? Typically, students will probably forget most of what they've learned in the first 2-3 weeks after taking an exam, but I'm pretty sure you probably want to memorize and retain that information after like months or years. So this is where you use Memory Palace. Well, use Memory Palace for everything really. You can use it for the sciences, even computer science, religion, especially history. If you want to memorize textbooks verbatim and and really get into it, you can definitely do really well in history. And uh, not sure about math. You can probably memorize theories um, and stuff like that. But Kramish, did you have something to say?
Oh yeah, I was just gonna say. I mean, I always felt like I had a terrible memory, but the first time I used a memory palace technique, like just the first day, I was able to memorize like 26 cards. I mean, after learning my system or whatever, but it was amazing just having that recall just immediately after going through it. Just yeah,
Yeah, it's definitely
memory.
very
Having
very
the effects immediately was just yeah, really drew me to it.
it definitely changed my world when I first got introduced to it. So uh when I first looked into it, it was maybe like 6 years ago. I saw it in a TED talk. I'm not sure which TED talk, but basically when I saw that video, I didn't think much of it. I knew it was working, but I didn't know that I can like make my own really fast. I thought it was so much effort. I mean, it is a lot of effort, but once you learn about it being so helpful for the rest of your life, just by rehearsing it like maybe 3 times a month, it's already enough for you to really have that memorized and ingrained into your memory. And actually, when you get or grinded or pimped into to answering these specific questions, you just you just got it immediately. And
Mhm.
at first I was so skeptical. I saw Memory Palace as something that's it's so dumb. It's not really helpful. And I spoke to Alex Mullen, so he was the number one memory champion of the world. I asked him why this was necessary, and he told me, say just jump into it, take the risk. You might think that it's not helpful, but once you try it, at least you're gonna love it.
Yeah. So why don't we start with with my memory palace. I like to use places that I know well, like apartments I've had or my childhood home and places I know. And then I've started using more made up or created ones. I know you do a lot of that. So most of yours,
Yeah.
how you go about finding memory palace to use. Like,
So I was really, really picky. So typically, people would try to find memory palaces in real life. Just going to places and taking pictures of these unique rooms. For me, I try to go into video games, or just Google images and try to find places that I recognize. So, like for example, the Simpsons room, or maybe a room from Naruto, from several anime movies, Attack on Titan, stuff like that. I just take a room that you're very familiar with, like maybe the Powerpuff Girls room, which we will be going through today at the end of our session. We are going through an example of the 10 hallmarks of cancer, how you can memorize those easily. Yes, we're going to use the Powerpuff Girls room. And also, so we have several questions here. Let's see. Mm, so someone asked, we need a lot of rooms then, right? You would need to use only one room to memorize one concept of a memory palace, if that's what you're asking. So you would probably need a lot of rooms if you want to memorize a lot of things. I've been using memory palace techniques for, I would say, around 4, 5 years, maybe 6. But let's see, what else? Do you have any questions for me, Kramish?
yeah. So when you're choosing a memory palace like the 10 hallmarks of cancer, did you pick that image or that room of the Powerpuff Girl with that in mind, or do you just pick images that look good and then it doesn't matter which
Yeah, I mean that's a very good question. So Kramish asked me what kind of questions. I mean, what kind of rooms am I picking So I told you guys before, I am very, very picky. When I choose a room, I make sure there's a lot of unique stuff in that room that I can use well. So if you look in this room that I posted in the image, I mean in the channel, you can see the table right in front of you, the mirror on the left side, and you can see the small puffy octopus on the right side that I can take advantage of. You can also see a closet right in the back there. And I can use that bed as well. And that window is pretty unique. So you can probably recognize this room immediately when you close your eyes after, just making sure you have a mental picture of this map. But I will talk about that later when we actually go through the example. But let's see. How do you even make a memory palace, basically? So in order to actually make a memory palace, I have to make sure I have a laid out concept in a mind map. So a mind map. So if you downloaded XMindMapGen, okay. So if you go download that right now, I will take screenshots though. So basically, it's going to look like this when you download it, right? And you can edit this, all right? And you're gonna make a whole mind map. Let me see. I will show you some examples.
Sean asks if is the same memory palace used for different subjects.
Okay, so
easy to differentiate. Yeah, go ahead.
So I mean, if you have something to say to that, you can feel free to answer that, Crimage.
Yeah, I wouldn't. You use a memory palace, like you just use it one time when you're trying to store this into your long-term memory. At least that's how I've always done it. Like if I'm making a memory palace for a strategy chart, I make it for that chart and then I review that and I don't ever reuse that palace again. How about you, Vunami?
Yeah, so once using a memory palace, like Crimage said, I don't really use it. You don't use it again for a different subject or for a different concept. That same palace that you used, it's unique to you, and you only use it for that one concept. So it's very limiting to only one, and that's just because you don't want to ghost yourself. You don't want this memory palace to be confusing to you. You want it to be crystal clear. So when you have this memory palace, you have to make a whole different one for a different concept. So I have some examples of mind maps that I've created, and I'll just show you them. Okay. So these are mind maps. So basically, you have one big circle that acts as your main title, and then you connect them to maybe a list of items associated with that title, or a sequence of events like glycolysis, where you start off with glucose to G6P to F6P to F16BP, and so forth. But specifically here, you'll see protein sensitive to changes in, and then the lists are salt concentration, temperature, pH, and if you notice, there's a memory palace in that room where you have probably not the most unique aspects in the room, but you can see a rabbit, which is pretty new to you. You can see that there's some crazy sunlight happening from the window section, and of course you can copy and paste random items that you can find on Google Images and just place them through there. So you can see that there's like some random flask on the right side of that image of that memory palace, and that's going to be involved with the pH, changing the pH of several solutions and stuff like that. But anyways, so I'm just going to post more examples of mind maps so that you guys kind of get a sense of what I'm trying to do here. And this is all from the mind map gen. You can create it with different colors, make it unique to you. But so memory palace or memory techniques in general is a luxury. Okay, you don't have to. You're not supposed to be doing this immediately when you look at a textbook. You're supposed to be understanding what the heck you're learning first. Okay, I just want to make sure you guys don't waste too much time. Just make sure when you're in school, the whole point is to really understand what you're doing. Okay, so understand what the professor is saying. Okay, and after you become more organized and organizing a concept like these images I've shown you here, then you can make a memory palace based on that mind map. All right, I hope everyone can really understand that main point of this. Memory palace or memory techniques is a luxury. It's something that you do when you have extra free time in school, but very, very helpful for maintaining that memory for your long-term memory. Okay, and then you can notice that in several memory palaces, you have to have actors. You can use a specific actor, like let's say Dexter from Dexter's Laboratory. You can use Dexter from the actual movie, the serial killer movie, TV series, or you can use Breaking Bad, stuff like that. And Timothy's asking, how selective are you when you choose objects in a room for your memory palace? Oh, I'm very selective. Because you can easily ghost yourself when you use the same object in different memory palaces. I highly recommend not to use the same objects in different memory palaces. That's why it gets really harder as you make more memory palaces. So an object would be like a funny looking telephone, but when you go to a different memory palace, make sure that telephone is extremely different from the one that you used before.
Yeah. I had this problem early on where I had multiple doors in like one of my first palaces, and that didn't work out so well. I mean, and like you were saying, like a door's not very memorable unless you make it memorable, and then
yeah. So you maybe a different color door or a door with some certain designs. Yeah, for sure, like a triangle, rhomboid shape. Yeah. And also, I recommend rooms more so than the outside world because the outside world is very, very chaotic. It's not something you can easily remember, but if your spatial memory is very, very awesome and very, you can recall things immediately or easily, you could use the outside world. But Anthony Medavere, which is also a memory veteran, recommended to me to only use rooms. And if you have rooms that are unique enough, you just keep making and taking rooms from everywhere. So I also take rooms from the VR world, so virtual reality world, video games, anime, movies. Just steal these rooms.
Yeah, I was just at JFK Airport. I was in the old TWA, and I just took a video and slowly panned across the entire place because it's styled like in the 1950s or 60s. A lot of architecture and different things in there. So I just got that yesterday. I'm going to use that for a memory palace.
Heck yeah. Did you like take a picture of it, or are you just trying to keep it in your head?
No, I took a video and I just panned across the entire TWA original airport.
Hey, that's awesome. Yeah, that's definitely awesome because that's having a 360 video of that place, and that's awesome. Yes, I do make memory palaces and VR as well. I have several videos in my channel if you want to check it out. But let's see. So there's the idea of microstations. So if you look at the image that I just posted, it's just the Powerpuff Girl room again. If you see here, the table in front of you is going to be called the microstation. Okay, that's going to be microstation. Just means it's a section of your memory palace that you're going to be using for just one step of that concept, if that makes sense. So one step of the storyline, and then the mirror on the left is a microstation, and the bed on at the end is a microstation. I want you guys to know the terminology of how memory palaces work. Okay, and then let's see. And macro station is just a whole big section. Like I would say a macro station would be like one corner of the place. So if you look at the right corner of that room, It's going to have both the octopus, the closet, and the cabinet over there. Okay. If anyone have questions, just feel free to ask. Please, there's no dumb questions. All right. I'm okay with repeating answers. I'm not those type of people that would shun or insult anyone at all. Please, I know you guys are much younger than me. I know you guys are studying hard and you want to make your study time more efficient, better for you. Okay, I know how important this is to everybody. I do want to mention that I also want to be a professor, so I'm very patient with all of you guys. Okay.
Food touch on maybe a little bit of the major or PEG, or do you not want to do that today?
So guys, major system, PEG system. So these are different techniques, all right, totally different techniques that could help you incorporate more stuff into your memory palace. So a major system is basically associating a number with a letter. So basically, it's going to be like your native language where you know that number 3 is an M, a letter M, and a number 3 is also a mouth. So to associate it with a word is called the PEG system. I'm sure you guys probably know of this, and you might have your own system. I'm not sure, but basically, major system associates a number with a letter, and the PEG system associate a number with a word. I do have my own system, and I've compiled a tutorial on my YouTube channel. If you want to watch it later on today, it's really helpful to just have the actual systems really memorized in like, I guess I made it in like 7 minutes, 7 to 5 minutes. If you guys want to look into that. But we are talking about Memory Palace, so that's going to be our main point still. And remember, keep asking questions. How long does it usually take to make a Memory Palace? So it depends on you, really. To make a Memory Palace, you have to be pretty creative if you haven't noticed already. You have to choose your place. You have to make sure your concept is organized, but then the hardest part is to actually make a story. Make a story that's very, very exaggerated so that you can actually memorize or remember that story. When I first made my Memory Palace, I was so excited, to be honest. I made a Memory Palace in a game called Overwatch. I was Junkrat. I played in a Route 66. That's a place in the video game. And I remember just capsaicin is the main component of that Memory Palace. And you probably will memorize your first Memory Palace for the rest of your life. It's so exciting. But what the point is that I spent probably 3 hours working on it because I was just kind of excited and I just wanted to not make any mistakes. Obviously, I did make mistakes, but it's still fun.
So you said you spent 3 hours making that Memory Palace, but they asked, how long does it usually take to create a Memory Palace? Like, is that standard for you, or how long does it take for just like, say, an item list or something, or 6?
So right now, it would probably take me around 30 minutes to an hour to make a Memory Palace. But sometimes I rush it. I remember the day before my final exams, I made 36 Memory Palaces in one day before the exam, and I stayed up for 24 hours. Actually, no, 23 hours. I slept for 1 hour, and I got a perfect score on that exam. And keep in mind, this is the final exam of a medical school. So this is telling you how awesome Memory Palaces are. But because I rushed it, I made 36 Memory Palaces in one day. I pretty much forgot a lot of it. But you can imagine when I'm taking the exam, I'm just closing my eyes sometimes so I can actually visualize where the heck I'm going to in my Memory Palaces. So it's kind of weird but funny at the same time. I actually fell asleep during the exam for like 10 minutes, but I still finished the exam and left early.
So Timothy asks, what about revisiting your Memory Palaces? Like, how often do you go back and review them?
So there's several people have mentioned a system of how to when to revise. So this is spatial. This is a repetition. You want to rehearse your memory palace probably. Uh, Ideally, it would be at least once a week. Uh, so when you start your classes, the first week you can try to make a lot of memory palaces, and then you can just review or rehearse every single one of them just at least once a week. That would be ideal. But also, I personally just review them maybe twice a week just to make sure. I want to just make sure I got them down. And plus, it's fun. When you sit down, you close your eyes and you just kind of meditate. You just try to walk through your storyline and see if it works out. And it should work out if your memory palace is creative and exaggerated enough. But
Another person asks, I guess, quickly about which system is better, the Dominic system or Major system.
So they're equivalent to each other. Dominic system, if you're very very social with people, it probably might work out because Dominic system basically, if you haven't known already, it associates a number with celebrity faces. So like Tom Cruise is, for example, number 3. I'm just making that up, but people really do associate numbers with celebrity faces, and it does work out. And Dominic actually is one of the memory champions of the world, so he vouches this.
Okay, so that's also, you can use people that you know as well, and the Major system is just assigning specific letters like K for 7 and R for 4, for example, and creating words with that. But yeah, I use both of them actually.
Oh, you do? Oh, that's very interesting actually. That probably gives you stronger associations too. To have a face, Major system, like all of those associations. I would say, in my opinion, the more associations you have in general, the better your retention will be in memory. And and so if I create multiple memory palaces, make sure that it's very different from each other. The story is different. Don't use the same actor or actresses. Like, don't use Spider-Man 2 times. Don't use Batman 2 or 3 times. Just use it one time for one palace.
Yeah. Yeah, I'd agree with that. But yeah, it's just either one is great.
Yeah, and so I want you guys to think of memory palaces as something that's really fun, man. It's just an idea of creating a story, and it associates your actors with their specific action on that microstation that connects them to a concept that you're trying to memorize. And it could be any kind of story. Remember to make sure that the story should be full of surprises, like I said before, because we are more likely to remember stories that are typically insane. You can probably make memory palaces that are not safe for work, or some crazy stuff. Just make sure you don't tell people about it. It's a little weird, if you're might be racist accidentally, or you just discriminate from time to time.
Yeah, we remember more extreme or absurd situations much stronger.
Yeah, because keep going, Tramage.
Ask, what if you run out of space? Read about what you were talking about in Mind for Numbers. I haven't read the book, and running out of space, I mean, you can always go to new places or see a new location, or there's always more palaces to be created.
Yeah, for sure. You can't really run out of spaces. There's an endless amount of rooms that people have created in their lifetime. You can find in different countries. If you're big on traveling, oh gosh, you can take your camera out and just take a 360 view of that room, of any room that you're looking at. But be sure to be a little picky, because you're going to be using that room for the rest of your life if you actually make a memory palace out of it.
Yeah, what I was going to say is, like when I created one of the more difficult memory palaces that were just numbers on a strategy chart, I didn't understand why those numbers were there, but I knew that I had to memorize them. And for that chart, I reviewed a lot more. So I reviewed it an hour after I made it, and then the next day, and then at the end of the week, and then a week after that. And then I started doing 2-week intervals. So using spaced repetition for more difficult, so for more complex memory palaces, I would recommend reviewing a lot more. But
Yeah, for sure.
information can be stored in a memory palace.
Also, I do want to create or tell you guys about a guideline that I created just to make sure you guys are organized in how to make a memory palace. So I posted this down. Basically, making a mind map of the concept after you memorized it. Okay, you have to memorize the whole concept and understand it first. Sorry, you have to understand it first before you memorize it, and then you find a place to use. You gather actors and actresses that you can use to actually make that storyline work out, and then you make the storyline goes in a clockwise direction. That's just a conventional method that I do, but you can make it counterclockwise if you want, and doing that for each microstation of that palace. And then you just rehearse 3 times a week for 3 months. Oh, so it says that here, 3 times a week for 3 months. You can do it once a week if you want. It really depends on how awesome your memory palace is. Some people, they can just do once a month and still be like crystal clear, and that happens to me too sometimes, because when you get so excited to make the specific memory palace and you actually do it well, you really don't need to rehearse it that much. Probably do it like once a month, maybe once every 2 months. But but when you rehearse your memory palace story, don't do it just only from start to finish. Also do it from finish to start. Okay, you can do it from the middle to the end or the middle to the beginning, but that's just the rehearsal process. And also, you can incorporate memory palaces into your Anki. So for each of your flashcard, you can ask the Anki card to ask you questions about that concept, and then when in the answer key or the answer part of the Anki card, you could input the actual picture of the memory palace in the answers as well, so that you have a trigger point for answering that question.
Okay, next question is how much information can be stored in one memory palace? You wanna this one?
Okay. Uh, so you can actually store a lot of information into one memory palace, but it's really hard. I'm just trying to say it's really hard. So typically for me, I recommend just going up to around, I would say like 3 to 7 items or sequence of events to memorize. Anything more than 7 is a lot, but there's the idea of chaining memory palaces. So this is even more advanced, where you basically merge a memory palace into another memory palace. All right, and that way you can add more information into that same memory palace. But the issue is that how are you going to do this? You might have to incorporate the idea of walking into the other room uh, for a certain reason. So maybe you might want to walk into a kitchen to make food, and so you try to make a situation where maybe you're just extremely hungry, or maybe a girlfriend of yours in that memory palace is actually very, very hungry, and she'll kill you if you don't make food for her. So like that, for example. Just finding a way to make yourself going to the other room.
Yeah, there's I mean, my memory palaces are mostly places I know well, and so going to the other room is just the natural order of events of how I travel through there. Um, but yeah, people use memory palaces to memorize a full deck of cards. So they have 52 locations, and they go through that and they memorize. I don't know if they use memory stories or palaces, but the people that memorize just thousands of digits of pi. I mean, it's crazy. It's how much work you want to put into it. I mean, you could store a lot of information in one palace.
Yeah, for sure. It's definitely really, really exciting to make memory palaces. Feel free to keep asking us questions. So someone asked James, maybe you use some palace that you pass every day as a memory palace. Uh, oh, okay. So that's a good question actually. So the places that you pass by every day. that's kind of hard, because if you pass by that place and it actually changed on you, like there's some construction work, then you're gonna be confused. After you make a memory palace of that place that you pass through every day, they might have construction work, and things will change, and you're not gonna remember that anymore, because the storyline that you associate that memory palace with, it just doesn't work out well. So don't do that. So don't use places that you see every day. So don't use your room, for example. Don't use your school classroom. But you can use your school classroom after you leave that school and go to a different school, because you don't see that room anymore.
Yeah, there's just so many places you could use. It's why you wouldn't want to risk it, especially it's stuff you want to remember for the rest of your life. You could rearrange your room 3 times in the next years.
So someone asked, what should the story consist of? The story should consist of a story that you've made up, but that storyline is associated with the memory that you want to memorize. So we are actually going through an example of this pretty soon. Stay tuned. And so it's asking here, what resources do you have or do I use to make palaces? I use Google Images. I use anime, so I just type down the name of the anime, type in room. For example, Boku no Hero. I'm sure many of you guys know of this. They had an episode where they just look at each other's rooms to have a competition on which room is the better room. And I definitely took advantage of that and grabbed some screenshots of those. It could be that you guys don't know that anime, and that's okay. I'm just saying that I took advantage of these several movies, these scenes where they show the room in a 360 format, and I just screenshot it and stole it, basically.
Yeah, I've done things like I'll use somebody I know. I'll use my friends, and I mostly saw him at my old pizzeria I used to work at. So my memory palace for him is him in the pizzeria that we used to work at is what I use. So sometimes, depending if I use somebody I know, I just use the known location that I used to hang out with them at.
Yeah, definitely use your friends, your family, anyone that you know. Let's see. But it's kind of weird, because when you use your friends, you're always going to associate your friend with that memory palace. So if you yeah, so if you see that person and you told that person to basically do something weird in a memory palace, you're gonna see that person a different way, maybe.
Yeah,
I mean, at least
for cards I use some people. So my friend Honora is the nine of hearts. So that I do always think about that when I see her. I'm like, oh yeah, you're
9 of hearts.
in or card memorization.
Yeah, nice. Yeah. And someone's asking, do you store the memory palaces somewhere else other than your head? So yeah, that's a good question. So you don't have to just store it in your head. I mean, you will store in your head, but basically when you make your mind map and images, just screenshot that image and place it into somewhere safe. So like put it into a folder that you have, or you can make your own Discord server and you could just go into the Memory World Discord server and just post your memory palace there and inputting all the information associated with it, and then you can just keep it in that channel, and then when you want to go back to it, you just go into the search box. It's called Loci Collection, basically. You're collecting all of your memory palaces, and you want to make sure it doesn't get lost anywhere. So Discord servers are really helpful for that. I'll just post the server here if that's okay with Chan, James Chan.
Yeah, so let's say for some reason you used Urameshi from Yu Yu Hakusho, like using his finger gun and blowing up a table in a specific memory palace, and that's just like what you had to memorize. So you would take a picture, like let's say you took a Google image for that memory palace of a room, and there's a table there. So you would go to Google Images and just get a picture of Urameshi and drag him in like a photo editor on top of the table to remind you of that action that was going on. Right? Isn't that kind of how you?
Yeah, so associating an action to the object and stuff like that, it does help out. Did you also mention something else? I'm sorry, I didn't hear the other parts.
No, that was it.
Okay, and
So,
so
I'll write if I can answer that. Some memory palaces I've just made up these rooms, these houses in my mind, and I don't have a picture of it, but it's something that I've studied. I've meditated on it and thought about the structure of it carefully, so I know it well. And I've jotted down outlines of it in a notebook, so just so I can have the structure and all the what did you call the loci? What's the word that we're using?
microstation.
Yeah, microstation. So I write down all my microstations on just like a like a blueprint of the memory palace, and so that's what I'll review. But some of them, yes, I have actual images and videos that I'll go through.
Yes, and Kramich did post a lot of his own memory palaces in the there's a channel in that server. It's called Loci Collection, and that Loci Collection channel actually is very valuable to all of you guys. I just want to let you guys know because you can just take those places and use them as your own. Input your mind maps and just make your storyline just straight from those places that we posted, because it takes a long time to actually find a good place, and I'm very picky. So for me to post in there, it's going to be a good one. And I posted hundreds and hundreds of memory palaces in there, by the way. So take advantage of that. I also post videos, 360 videos of virtual reality memory palaces in the actual YouTube channel as well. So it's maybe 1 minute long, just looking at a place. It works. Let's see. So if you guys have any other questions, we can start our memory palace example, actually. What do you think, Kramich? Should we continue? Should we start our example, or should we? Anything else you want to add?
No, I think we should go on and get into it. I think people are interested to see how this process actually goes. I think this is going to be a really great introduction to it.
All right, so let me first find the 10 hallmarks of cancer really quick. Find a reputable resource so that you guys believe me that these are actually the 10 hallmarks of cancer. Okay, guys, so this is from the Cell Bio reputable research society, and in this is the 10 hallmarks of cancer. So the 10 hallmarks are deregulating cellular energetics, resisting cell death, sustaining proliferative signaling. I know this is a little bit overwhelming, but these are basically the 10 hallmarks, and then you see the other words in circles. Those are the drugs used to treat those specific hallmarks. Okay, so here's my mind map of the actual hallmarks of cancer, just to make it organized. So from step 1 is the actual. These are not a series of steps. These are a list of hallmarks. I just want to let you guys know. But I made it so it looks like there's a sequence of events, but it's not a sequence of events. So resisting cell death, deregulating cellular energetics. Okay, you guys all good with this? I just want you guys to make sure you're understanding what I'm doing. Can everyone say something just to make sure everything's okay? Okay.
Yeah, well, I'm following along. I mean, yeah, it's a lot, but yeah, it makes sense.
All right. So now that you guys see the 10 hallmarks of cancer, I will show you the palace. And the palace, as I posted many times before, is the Powerpuff Girl palace. So zoom into that picture, but also have a picture of the actual 10 hallmarks of cancer as well, just to look at both of them so I can tell you what's happening. So in this palace, right, step 1 is going to involve resisting cell death. Okay, and so you guys know the professor, right? You guys know the Powerpuff Girls. You know Buttercup, Bubbles and Blossom. Okay. Right, and the professor, okay, he's sitting on that chair, the chair right at the table in front of you. Okay, the chair on the left side of that table. Okay, you guys see it? So the professor is sitting onto that. And the story starts off with, okay, so apparently this professor has cancer. That's pretty bad. Doesn't matter what kind of cancer, but he has cancer, right? And the Powerpuff Girls basically arrested him. You know, his hands are in handcuffs. And the reason why is because the professor has cancer, and you know how the professor is. He does a lot of experiments, and he's going to like try to dump chemicals into his body so that he can find a cure for cancer. And you know, Powerpuff Girls doesn't want that to happen. You know, he might kill himself doing this, and so that's why they placed handcuffs onto the professor. And you know, as a result, he's trying to resist the handcuffs. So that's step one, resisting cell death. I really hope that really helps you remember that. Okay, so the next part of the story involves the left side where you see the mirror and the actual heart-shaped device right beside that mirror. Do you guys see the heart-shaped device? I will post an image of that close in a zoomed in fashion. Okay, you guys see that? Okay. So the next part of the Memory Palace involves Buttercup. Okay, Buttercup is sitting right next to that mirror, trying to pull that heart-shaped device out. Okay, so the top part of that heart, you see like there's like a little knob. You pull onto that, right? And it's a long wire. Okay, think of it as an electric cord. It's an electrical charger or energy charger. She's going to put that into her ears to charge herself. Okay. So basically these Powerpuff Girls are like robots. They get charged by this device. All right, they're placing it in. Buttercup is placing that into her ears, and then Buttercup, you know, slams that device down and saying, "What are you doing? We should be helping the professor, involving his cancer issue and watching him, preventing him from, you know, getting away from his handcuffs." And Buttercup says, "Sorry," you know. And this is the second step: deregulating cellular energetics. So deregulating is the idea of Buttercup. Sorry about that. The idea of Blossom disrupting or interrupting Buttercup from actually charging herself. So that's the deregulating aspect. The cellular energetics is the part where she's actually trying to charge herself. So we are deregulating her cellular energetics. I know that's a bit of a stretch, but I hope that helps. So number one, again, it's resisting cell death, where Professor is resisting the idea of the handcuffs. Number two is deregulating cellular energetics, where Buttercup gets interrupted by Blossom. Sorry, not Blossom. These names are hard to remember, actually. The blue Powerpuff Girl that is basically interrupting her. Okay. Now the third step. The third step is. What's up? What questions do you have?
Oh, I was just going to say, I was just going to point out, yeah, you know, it seems like a stretch, but it's, you know, that's something that came to your mind. That was one of the first things you thought of when you were thinking of, okay, what can represent deregulating? And that's what's important, is like your creativity and what's meaningful or sticks out to you.
Yeah. So what works for me definitely doesn't have to work for you. So when I make memory palaces on YouTube, some people might not really actually remember it, and that's okay. As long as you make a memory palace that's unique to you and it's personalized for your needs, then kudos to you and great for you. Okay, so the third part is sustaining proliferative signaling. This is a long phrase, and first you start off with you see the part of the place where there's puffy animals, the gray action figures, or not action figures, but these puffy animals, stuffed animals. You see that over there on the left side, right? Remember, we're going through a clockwise direction of that memory palace, from the table to the mirror, and now to this. It's kind of close to the mirror. You guys see that? I just posted an image of it. Just respond to me, sorry. Yep. Okay. All right. So this is the part where Blossom, the red girl, she is talking to these stuffed animals. Okay. She's talking and she's kind of getting angry. Okay. They're talking about the idea of pro-life versus pro-choice. Okay. This is the idea of abortion. So so they're trying to talk about, hey, are you pro-life? Are you pro-choice? Why? Why? And then they're getting into a heated argument, and that's going to be associated with proliferative, sustaining proliferative signaling. So I'll tell you why. Okay, so they're sustaining a conversation, all right, and they're talking about pro-life. So that's in the word proliferative, pro-life. Signaling is just some random terminology. It's just something you just have to remember with that phrase. So sustaining proliferative signaling. That's the third step of this memory palace. I hope that makes sense. See, you're associating the action with the actual word of what you're supposed to remember. So now you guys, you probably will remember, okay, so resisting cell death. All right, deregulating cellular energetics. All right, now sustaining proliferative signaling. You guys can remember this. Now, the fourth part, evading growth suppressors. So how do you remember this? Now, the next part is the windows. All right, you see the windows there, and you see the girls are basically gathering around that window area. Okay, and they just saw an announcement saying, "Hey, there's a villain outside that's trying to basically make people turn younger." Okay, and so there's a beam aiming towards them into the room, and that beam will make you younger. And the girls don't want that because they want to go through puberty, they want to have kids, they want to have a family. All right, so basically the kids, the Powerpuff Girls are trying to avoid that beam, so they're evading growth suppressors. So growth suppressors mean that growth suppressors in general, it just means it would prevent growth. Sorry, it would prevent growth from happening. So you want to avoid that idea. I hope that makes sense. So evading growth suppressors, they're evading the laser. Okay, and the growth suppressors is the idea that they want to get older, so they're trying to avoid those growth suppressors. Well, the window is just symbolizing the idea of a beam, the growth suppressing beam going into the room. So we're actually not looking at outside. We just want to we have something from the outside world interacting with the room, yes, but we're not looking at the outside world. We just want the idea of the laser beam, which is the growth suppressor, going into the room, and the Powerpuff Girls avoiding that. They're trying to dodge that laser beam, and they dodge that laser beam by going under the bed. Okay, so now they're under the bed. All right, and under the bed, they notice that the laser beam has an after effect. Okay, the after effect is the actual immune destruction. So this is where it's a stretch. I'm trying so hard to find out what to do here, but I actually didn't know what to do. So I'm just going to say that the laser has an after effect where it would just try to destroy your immune system. And you know that HIV, for example, kind of destroys your immune system. So I kind of associate it with HIV. But HIV is not a cancer. I just want you guys to know that HIV is not a cancer. But basically, the laser beam can destroy your immune system. And so by being under the bed, they are avoiding immune destruction, the after effects of the beam. Now, next up is the closet. You see the closet on the right corner, the right side of the bed? You guys, I want you guys to be interactive so that I can actually continue, because I don't want you guys to get bored or anything like that. Okay, so that closet. So there's a guy in that closet, all right? It's an older individual. His name is Ban. He's from an anime called Nanatsu no Taizai. I'm not sure you guys know this person, but let's say this person is an immortal being, okay? And he's in the closet, and the girls decide to go into that closet, okay? They're trying to avoid that immune destruction again, right? And by going into the closet, they are scared, okay? And And the next part of the storyline involves enabling replicative immortality. So we know that Bond, this older individual, is an immortal being. So let's say he's like a vampire. Okay, I want you guys to you guys don't have to know this person specifically. Just say, okay, there's an immortal person that's like a vampire in the actual closet. So the girls, what they're gonna do is bite onto his shoulders. All right, so that they can actually take the immortality out of him. All right, and that's the next part of the story, enabling replicative immortality. All right, now the next part of the story involves the next part. So you see the octopus on the right side of the room. So the octopus. Yes. Okay. So you guys see the octopus on the right side. But let me just post the memory palace again, just so we can see the actual mind map and the palace. I don't want you guys to get confused. Okay. The next part is tumor promoting inflammation. So as the Powerpuff Girls, as the laser subsides, everything is just like it's getting back to normal. They walk out the closet, all right, and they walk past the octopus, saying, "Okay, well, let's just relax, let's just chill, let's see what the professor is doing." But while walking past the octopus latches its arms on the girls, okay, and as a result of that, those arms will induce some form of inflammation onto into the Powerpuff Girls' bodies. So you're gonna notice that their bodies are getting kind of swollen, and that's how I remember that it's going to be a tumor promoting inflammation. All right, next part of the story involves activating invasion and metastasis. So invasion, you guys know what invasion is. It's basically the idea of intruding into a person's home. And you guys know the Mojo Jojo, the Powerpuff Girls' enemy, their sworn enemy. Mojo Jojo enters the room. Believe it or not, in this actual image, there's actually there's a door. There's a door in this room. It's on the right side of this octopus. You guys don't see it, and I'm sorry about that. There's an actual door there, okay? And Mojo Jojo enters and invades that room, saying, Did you see or did you get affected by the laser blast? Right? So that's what's going to remind you of invasion and metastasis. Metastasis is the idea of spreading the actual disease or the actual condition. It's going to be a bit hard for you to remember that, just because maybe you might not have an idea of what metastasis is, and the word metastasis might be a confusing word to remember. But just remember invasion, and then you'll automatically associate it with metastasis as time goes on. So activating invasion and metastasis is the part where Mojo Jojo invades the room and starts screaming like crazy, saying, "Hey, did you get affected or anything like that?" And then the next part is called inducing angiogenesis, or also known as neoangiogenesis. So the girls, they're swollen, right? And suddenly they look very weird. They look like different individuals, and it looks like a person named Angie. So this is something unique to me, where the girls look like Angie, a girl named Angie, someone I know in real life. But you could also associate it with someone that's also named Angie. So that's inducing angiogenesis. Now the last part of the story. All right, we're almost done, guys. So the last part of the story involves genome instability and mutation. All right. So the professor, you guys remember the professor, right? From step one, he's trying to resist the handcuffs. Suddenly, he actually got away from those handcuffs finally, and he actually got a couple of chemicals, right? And he's just like dumping it on his head and just throwing it at Mojo Jojo because he's mad at Mojo Jojo, just because he's like trying to destroy their home. And so he's intentionally trying to mutate himself and Mojo Jojo, causing genome instability and mutation. So that's the end of this storyline. So I'll go through this from step one to the end. So remember that Professor resisting cell death. There's the idea of Buttercup resisting sorry, not resisting, deregulating that cellular energetic. Blossom is sustaining pro-life versus pro-choice. And then they're avoiding the growth suppressors, the laser beam, and then they go under the bed. And by going under the bed and escaping into the closet, they are avoiding immune destruction. And then in the closet, they bit onto Ban, which is the character that is immortal. So we're enabling replicative immortality. And then next, we go to we walk past the octopus, where it will actually produce inflammation on you by placing those legs onto the Powerpuff Girls. And then Mojo Jojo enters the room, causing invasion and metastasis. And then the girls look like neoangiogenesis. So Mojo Jojo looks confused, like, hey, is that Angie? I'm not sure. And then last part of the story involves the professor throwing those chemicals onto Mojo Jojo and himself to an attempt to cure cancer, but also to destroy Mojo Jojo. Bam. So that's your how you can memorize the 10 hallmarks of cancer.
Wow. Yeah, that's impressive. Someone commented, they said, I'm not that imaginative. And to that, I would say I didn't think I was very imaginative. And when I started, it's something you can practice and you get better at. The more you try and the more memory palaces you create, you just get better at it. And also what you were saying is like this memory palace, if they have to memorize the hallmarks of cancer coming up, they could come back and use this. And this is really imaginative and like more so than I could do. And so that really makes that stick out to me. And my understanding is like people put these out there to memorize a whole list of different things that you're going to need that you can just look up and use like this, correct?
Yeah. And also, some of these things might not work with you, but, everyone try closing your eyes. You guys know the place already. You guys know what's happening in the storyline. You know that the girls are, handcuffing the professor. The professor's resisting cell death. You know that Buttercup is actually deregulating cellular energetics because she tried to charge herself and she got interrupted. And then, Blossom is, yelling, talking about pro-life versus pro-choice. You guys know what's happening. You just got to associate the actual list of hallmarks with those storylines. And I know it's complicated. I know it's pretty hard. But also realize that when you're under pressure to memorize something, this is probably going to be your best choice because you want to, it feels like you don't waste time when you're studying, basically, because you know that when you go through the hard effort, you're not going to feel any regret when doing this. Because now when you're going off to like maybe church, you close your eyes and maybe you're not listening to church, you're just like, okay, what kind of memory palaces can I recall? And so you're just like, okay, let's do that and stuff like that. And don't worry, MSN needs help. We are basically almost done. We'll just answer any questions you guys have, and I think that's pretty much it. We went over an hour. Sorry about that, but I really hope you guys have a comprehensive understanding of memory palaces.
So I was asked, when you're forming the storyline, sometimes we come up with multiple storylines, like when you were explaining deregulating cellular energetics. She could be charging, or maybe she was looking at the mirror and was hit by a lightning. Does it become confusing? The palace was supposed to be for one concept, but you end up recalling the process of forming the story, and those storylines mess up.
Okay.
Yeah. So, I mean. Well, first you go left to right. You always take the same path around the memory palace.
Yes. Everyone know that this is a clockwise storyline. So we're starting from, a circular format where we start off at the table in front of you, and then you move to the left where you see the Buttercup doing her own thing. And then you see moving towards a circle again, clockwise, you'll see Blossom yelling. And then when you see the windows, you're going to get triggered to know what's going to happen next. The laser is actually coming in. So there's a time frame, for when all of this happens. It just has to go along with your storyline. So it's in an orderly format.
Oh, okay. So Asking about playing cards and how you would do that. A couple different methods. You use the Dominic method or major system, but it's something, that if you have a lot of free time and you want to do for fun. But yeah, so you just assign a name or a celebrity to each card, and they have an action, or some system celebrity with a specific action object, and then you use a memory palace to store each card. Michael Jordan's slam dunking could be, five of clubs or something in the first place of your memory palace. So that's like a dumpster outside for the one I use. But yeah, I mean, you could look into it. But yeah, I'd look at the Dominic system or the major system if you're interested in looking into.
Yeah, so that's also a good point. My friend is also my friend named Jason. He's a dealer in a casino, and what he does is use the Dominic system. So he associates the number of the cards with the celebrity, and that really helps him memorize the card and allows him to remember, hey, which person again needs this amount of money or this amount of chips or maybe what card do they have, so that you can actually make automatic calculations on whether this goes over 21 in blackjack, for example, stuff like that. Because when you're a dealer, you want to make sure you're not messing up. So you're gonna need a memory technique to actually keep up with what's going on. Or you don't have to use memory techniques for anything really, but it's a choice that will help you along for us.
Yeah, wow, that's impressive. That makes a lot of sense because that's a high pressure job where you're playing. He's doing 100 payouts per hour, so it's easy to make mistakes. But yeah, that's one of those innovative ways to use memory techniques to perform a job better.
Yeah, of course. And so let's see. Someone's asking, after finishing in Memory Palace, do you create Anki questions about the concepts? So in the Anki, right, you just do it the way you usually do it, where you just ask questions about certain concepts. But when that concept is associated with your Memory Palace, make sure you ask the question the same way. Just ask any question about a concept, and then in the answer section of the Anki card, you input the image of the Memory Palace to remind you that, hey, you used the Memory Palace for this, so you should definitely know the answer to this question. You know what I mean? So here's an example. So here's an Anki card. All right, I already showed the answer. So it says, what color does Staph aureus turns Manito agar? Okay, and this is the Memory Palace where that you should put into the answer choice. Well, I mean, the answer is yellow, so you input it yellow in the answer. But then in the extra portion of the answer choice, you input the image, and the image will tell you, okay, so this is the Memory Palace that you used, and it actually ferments mannitol and turns it into yellow. Okay, so that's the answer. But you have to remember that Memory Palace actually has that, so you should really remember that. Let's see, what else? What other questions do you guys have?
Timothy says, how do you remember which Memory Palace was for what concept? I mean...
okay, that's a good question. That's actually a very good question because I had an issue with this before. Depending on how creative you are, you could automatically remember that palace with the actual information you want to remember by just reviewing the storyline. So when you go through the storyline, you're like, okay, this guy's resisting cell death, so this is probably hallmarks of cancer. But also, you might not remember the palace because you made so many. So sometimes for me, I actually make the first step of the story associated with the title of the palace. So let's say like the Simpsons room. You're gonna notice that in the first step, you might have a lot of people who are yellow individuals, and that's going to probably remind you, hey, this is the Simpsons room, because the yellow people in the room reminds you of the Simpsons, stuff like that. So the first step of the storyline can remind you of the place.
Right, and that's why you were saying you don't want to reuse the same characters for different memory palaces. So once you review that first location, yeah, you're not going to confuse it with was I use bubbles in this memory palace and the 10. That's the 10 hallmarks of cancer.
Yeah, so the 10 hallmarks of cancer associated with bubbles. Don't use bubbles again. Don't use the professor again. Don't use Buttercup. Don't use Blossom again. Don't use the items that you've seen in this actual memory palace. And you guys know that heart-shaped device, the heart-shaped device that you guys saw, that's not intended to be used like that. But I made it so that it had a different purpose in life. You could do that too, because if you look at that, it looks like it can do a lot of other things, but I made it so it does that. So that's unique to you. And this memory palace, I think it took me a bit over an hour just because there's 10 items in here. And I wanted to make it as perfect as possible. I'm a perfectionist, so try to make sure it's very unique to me, and it really does work out. And it was so fun to rehearse every time. And when you rehearse a memory palace, you're gonna feel as though it's going fast forward after you rehearse it a few times, because you already know the storyline. And you can notice that when I spoke to you at the end, when I rehearsed to you the storyline, I said it really fast, by the way. And I can go like 5 times faster in my mind without really saying it out loud. So that's just saying that you can, when someone asks you a question and it refers to some information referring to your memory palace, you're gonna instantly, like, just snapping your fingers. You're just going to say it out loud. What's the actual answer? Okay, someone asked, what if you use something similar instead of doing it in place? You make a story with what you're learning. Learning about a cell, you imagine a cell, make a story with the cell.
Yeah, so more like a memory story than a memory palace.
I guess always try to make things different from other memory palace. Always make it unique. Don't make anything similar to another memory palace. And let's see, what else? Yeah, just make it very unique. I would just say in general, just make it unique to you. Make it different for each memory palace. Try not to ghost yourself. That's basically the best recommendation. And it's really up to your judgment on whether or not you want to make something similar. But it's always the best idea not to make it similar. And there's a lot of different people out there. You don't have to use like Tom Cruise like 3 times. Just use him one time for that one place. I remember Tom Cruise as being the guy from the Sleep Stage Cycles. He's basically holding a sniper, shooting down someone, and causing someone to go into deep REM sleep. Yeah. But that's something I recall immediately. Let's see, what other questions? If nobody else have any other questions, then I guess this is it. Everyone, I'm very happy that you guys joined in to tune in to this session. And, thank you, Kramich, for coming in to help me out, asking me questions that the audience wants to ask.
Yeah, this was great.
Yeah. Thanks a lot, guys.
Being invited.